I really like your rain jacket.
Pick up where we left off yesterday. So, what I want to be able to do today is get through 9.2 parts 1 and 2 both. So I think we can do that. Yesterday, I had you write on your paper, write on your note sheet, I asked you to write Pascal's triangle. So once again, how does that work? Well, it starts with a 1 and a 1.
Two.
Then in the next row, no, that's it for the top row. The next row, we put a 1 here, a 1 here, and then we add these together to get a 2. And then we put a 1 here and a 1 here.
So 2 there and a 2 there.
These 2 make 3, and these 2 make 3. 1 on each end.
4.
This will be a 4, 6, 4. We'll do one more row. 1 on each end. 5, 10, 10, 5. Now, if you aren't neat, and if you don't keep things kind of organized, you're not going to know what to add together. So try to structure it the way I have. Now, how do we use that triangle? Well, this is kind of where we ended yesterday. We were getting kind of in a rush. So let's look at problem number 1. I know we already did it. We're going to do it again. It says expand x plus y to the 4th. So here are the steps I want you to go through. First of all, because it's to the 4th power, I'm going to be looking at the 4th row of my triangle. Now kids, that's critical. You got to recognize this is the 1st row, 2nd row, 3rd row, 4th row. Whatever power you are expanding to is the row you're going to use. So I'm just going to write down those numbers. I'm going to write down a 1, a 4, a 6, a 4, and a 1. Now I spread those out because I want to have plenty of room. You don't need to spread them out quite as much as I did. But step 1, write down the 4th row of the triangle. Step 2, write down, next to each of these numbers, write down an X and a Y. Because all the terms are going to have X's and Y's. That's what you are foiling out if you're foiling. Now I'm going to put the powers on. Does anybody remember how that works? What happens with the powers? Clark?
It does a combination to equal 4 for the powers. So for the first one, x to the 4th, there's no y.
Okay, now let's stop right there. Yes, I'll let you continue, Clark. You're right. But remember, whatever letter is first, that exponent starts big, and then it starts going down. So if this is a 4, this would be a 3, 2, 1, 0. And then like Clark said, you can either make them add up to 4, or you can simply do what we just did, but start down here and say this y will be 4, 3, 2, 1. Notice it's exactly like Clark said. Add them up. 4, 4, 4, 4, 4.
So can you erase the x's and y's?
Now, we're going to get rid of, Jabria's right. First of all, let me put pluses in between here. Separate the terms. These are different terms, so each one has to be handled differently. This, Jabria says, can really be simplified. Y to the 0th is just 1. So this whole thing is just x to the 4th. You don't need to write all that in your answer. What's this? 4 x cubed y? And
6x squared, y squared.
Yep.
4y to the 3rd.
Well, there's an x in there, so 4x y to the 3rd. And then on the very end, I have just y to the 4th. Now, everybody okay with that? We did this one yesterday, but now we kind of went through it step by step by step. So let's look at the next one because it's a little bit trickier. Okay, the next one is x plus 2y to the third. Now, step one, I am going to write down the numbers in the third row. Why am I using the third row? Because it's to the third power. So I'm going to write 1, 3, 3, 1. Those are the numbers in the third row. Now, next to each of these numbers, remember how here I erased the problem, but I put an x and a y? Here, I'm going to put an x and a 2y. An x and a 2y. Notice I'm using parentheses. Very important. Whatever the pieces of the problem are, in this case it's x and 2y, that's what I'm going to write down all the way down the line. Now I'm going to put my powers on. Well, this is the first letter. What's the power going to be on the first letter? 3 to the third, right? And then 2, 1, 0. And then what will this one be?
3.
3, 2, 1, 0. Now I'll put plus signs in there because I got to separate my terms. And now I'm going to simplify. Just like before, what's going to happen here? What happens to this? It's gone. So all we have is x cubed. Now be careful here, because you got a 3 times a 2. So that's going to be 6 x squared y. Does that make sense to everybody? Be really careful here. This is a 3x. This is a 4y squared.
Okay.
Whoa, I got real. Oh,
Why are you subtracting?
I'm not subtracting, that's times. You should be multiplying.
why that? Because it's
You have to square you gotta square everything in there. So the next term here is going to be 12 xy squared. Because you had a 2 squared, which is 4, times the 3.
Plus 6.
What's the last one going to be? This is going to be going away. 8y cubed. Why is it 8y cubed? 2 cubed is 8.
Okay, the second term, why does that change to 6? Is
Because
and
it's
why
3 times 2.
right, but why is it not 6y? 6. Never mind.
Why is that?
It's x squared y. I get it.
There's x squared and there's a y. One more. Now we're going to do 2x minus y to the 5th. How do we start? Let's be systematic. What do I do first?
The coefficient.
I do the coefficients. So I'm going to go to which row on my triangle? There's a lot of them. So 1, 5, 10, 10, 5, 1. That's my 5th row. And then next to each of these numbers, I'm going to put a 2x and a negative y. Those are the 2 parts of the problem, kids. It's a 2x and a negative y. A 2x and a negative y.
So do you still add in between them?
Yep. Please don't complain about having to write that down. Remember, your alternative is the FOIL. That's going to take a week.
Oh, no. Oh, my God.
Now, I went ahead and put the plus signs in because Bria asked about those. What I don't have in yet are my exponents. So what's the exponent going to be right here on this guy? 5. And then it's going to go to 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. What's going to happen right here? 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. Now, we got to simplify this, but before we do, does anybody have a question about the setup? This is my first term. This has to be simplified. When it's to the 0, it's just 1, so we can leave it out. 2 to the 5th. 32. X to the 5th. There's your first term. Now be careful here.
80.
This is somebody said 80 and you're right, but you got a 5, you got a 16x to the 4th, and you got a negative y. Negative 80, very good. Because you have a 5 times a 16 times a negative. So it's negative 80, x to the 4th, y.
It's 80.
Now the next one won't be negative, the next one will be positive. And it will be positive because what happened to the negative? It got squared. The negative is being squared, and what happens when you square a negative?
It cancels.
It cancels, it's positive.
Let's do it.
However, you still have an 80, very, very good. For those of you that aren't paying attention or can't keep up, 80 is because you have a 2 cubed. What's 2 cubed?
8 times 10.
8 times 10. Now watch it. The next term is going to be negative.
Negative 40.
Why is it negative? Because negative to the 3rd power is still negative, isn't it? This is a 4. 40. X squared y cubed. There's a lot to this problem. But I'm confident you can do it.
10x y to the 4th.
Timmy?
Yeah. So,
What's up is not your eyelids. Let's get them on.
I was awake, I'm just tired a little bit on this.
How about my next term?
10x y to the 4th.
It's going to be a positive 10 x y to the 4th.
And the last one is negative y to the 5th.
And the last one is negative y to the 5th. Now, we did those last 2 terms kind of fast. Who has a question about one of those? What? Yeah, if the exponent's odd on the negative term, it'll be negative.
This isn't that bad. It's just extensive.
Yep, it's extensive.
I got it.
All right, let's look on the back side then of the page. Oh my gosh. Look at problem 2A. What is freaking you out? The 11. And the reason the 11 is freaking you out is you would have to go to the 11th row of the triangle, right?
Or can you just add the 56?
Now, here is something new and exciting. Get your calculators out.
Oh, cool.
Yes.
You don't have the clue, you don't have any idea what I'm doing, but I want you to do this for me. I want you to type in your calculator 6C3. We talked about this yesterday. The C is in the same place the factorial is, right?
20.
I want you to do one more for me. I want you to do 6C4.
15.
Now, I want you to notice something. We're not going to do a whole bunch of these. But if I were going to continue this row, if I were to continue with the next row, I'd have a 1 on each end, and then this would be a 6. This would be a 15, 20, 15, 6, and the 1 on the end, right? Here is the trick. Notice when you typed in this, you got 20, right? That's this 20. This number right here, I gotta erase some of this now. This number right here, kids, this number right here is 66. This number is 65, 64, 63, 62, 61, 60. Each row of the triangle is just the combination numbers for that row. So, if you needed the 11th row of the triangle, the numbers in the 11th row would be 11C11, 11C10, 11C9, 11C8, and so on. Whatever row of numbers you want, it's 11, or it's that number, C, that number. So you start with 11C11. Then you go 11C10, just like the exponents. 11C9, 11C8, and so on. Now, notice that this problem does not ask me to do the whole expansion. It says find the 5th term. Okay, now wait a minute. This would be the first term. Would you agree with me? Second, third, fourth. So the 5th term would be 11C7. Do you see what I'm saying? First, second, third, fourth, fifth. So type it on your calculator, 11C7, and tell me what that number is. 30. That's your coefficient. That's like writing down this 10. That's your coefficient.
So this is?
No. Next to the coefficient would be a 2x and a y. Because next to every coefficient is a 2x and a y, right? Now we got to figure out the powers. Well, that's easy. If we wanted the first term, what would the power on the 2x be? 11. Here it would be 10, 9, 8, 7. And then using what Clark said, this one has to be a 4 because they have to add up to 11. So this is the term. It isn't simplified yet, but that's the term. Jason.
How do we get this 7 on the 2x?
When you do an expansion, whatever the first thing is in the parentheses, the power on that in the first term is that. Okay? So my first term in this expansion is a 2x. Here's the first term. So if I were doing that one, it would be 2x to the 11th. Here it's to the 10th, 9th, 8th, 7th. I'm just counting down my exponents like I do when I do the whole expansion.
Okay.
Now, how am I going to simplify this?
2 to the 7 times 330.
2 to the 7
128.
is 128, and 128 times 330, so this is 330 times 128, x to the 7th times y to the 4th. Those are time signs.
42,240.
42,240, x to the 7, y to the 4. There's the answer.
That's how you do it?
Now, we're going to do B in a minute, but let's do C first.
I want to do switch up work on.
The expansion is 2x plus 3y to the 5th. And I want to know the third term. Now, I erased my triangle on purpose. You still have yours.
1, 5, 10.
But to get the coefficients, if I don't want to write out the triangle, they're the C numbers. This is the 5th row, so the 5th power. So the first coefficient would be 5C5. The next one is 5C4. So the one I want, which is the third one, is 5C3. So I'm going to start with 5C3, which is what? 10. Now, next to the 10 is going to be a 2x and a 3y. If you started at the beginning in the first term, what would be the power on the 2x? 5. In the second term, it would be 4. So in the third term, it's 3. And then this must be a 2. You can just count. Yep. Nope. I did that. I want you to know that though, because if it's a 12, yeah. Now, simplify. What's 2x cubed?
8.
8x cubed. What's 3y squared? 9y squared. Now we're going to multiply 10 times 8 times 9.
80x cubed.
That wouldn't be 80.
Oh,
720. You have a 10, an 8, and a 9. So it would be 720.
wow.
What?
Yes, I just
Lazarus, here we are. Great, awesome. X to the third, y to the second. Now, we have one more problem to do, and that's 2B. You only have 1 minute left? All right, we'll save that one for tomorrow. You're ahead of the other group anyway. Well, Michael made it for 30 seconds. Have a good day, people.